Okay, I got a little project to show you. I've got to turn a couple of halves, quarters, I guess, of a sphere like this, and I've got to make the next size a little bigger. This was kind of a prototype, so I'm going to use split turning. Now, some of you guys may or may not be familiar with that, but basically, that's where you turn a block, take a block of wood, and you glue it with a piece of paper, almost any paper. You can use newsprint, brown paper, you could use probably office copy paper. And then it allows you to use a chisel to separate these very easily along that fault line. So let me show you what I'm going to make and how it's going to work out. Now I simply use carpenter's glue in between, which one probably doesn't make a lot of difference. I'm using the original Type Bond because it sets up pretty quick. So I've had this clamped for not too long. I'm cutting all this on a bandsaw, so I'm not getting the finest, smoothest surfaces to match together, but for the purpose of this, it'll work well enough. Well enough for it to hold while I'm turning. Now I'm going to square this block up. I'm trying to make a block about 2 inches square, and I've got to have one side perfectly flat in order that I can glue it effectively to a glue block. I'm gluing in grain, so even though it's not perfect, I'm not using a paper joint for this joint right here, so even though it's in grain, not the strongest, it'll be strong enough for me to turn, and then I think I can separate it easily off the glue block with a chisel or a parting tool. So let's go with bandsaw. Okay, the end that's going to go against the glue block, I think it's flat enough. I'm just going to go ahead and touch it against a sander to kind of get it flat. But I want the length of it, I want it to be 2 inches, so I go ahead and set the 2 inches here and trim that. Okay, so I'm using a threaded glue block. You know, I did this with my Beal tap. I did a video on that earlier. If you're interested, check that out. I made sure this surface is perfectly flat. I've already put a little carpenter's glue on here and let it set for a minute or two because this is in grain, and in grain doesn't hold glue very well. So I went ahead and put on, kind of act as a sizing a little bit so it could have time to kind of seal it up, get sucked into the grain a little bit. Now I'll put the final coat on both sides and put it together and bring up tailstock support to hold it. I'm just going to liberally put on some glue and liberally put some more glue on this block. And now just kind of do a little friction turn in here. Now I just got to kind of feel for what's the middle. And if it's off a bit, it won't make much difference. Just bring up tailstock support. And I just kind of feel those corners there to see if I got it pretty well centered. For this project, that'd be close enough. Now we'll let it sit and dry. Okay, now we're going to simply turn this into a half a sphere. Hemisphere? Whatever. Okay, we've got it turned around. I'm going to start rounding over this side. I'm taking very light cuts, not wanting to hog off wood because of the ingrained glue fastening. Smooth this out a little bit here. Alright, touch that up with a little bit of sandpaper. Doesn't have to be, it's going to be painted, so it doesn't have to be super sanded smooth. Probably sanding it up to 120 is probably going to be adequate. Okay, now I'm going to part this off, and we're going to part it at about an inch. I don't think it's going to make a great deal of difference exactly what that measurement is, but I think that'll be pretty close. So I'm going to use a fine parting tool rather than thin parting tool. A little bit more. Okay, that's the part we're looking for. I'll touch this end up against the belt sander and I'll show you shortly. So here's the seam that we're going to just, I'll show you. We're just going to take a chisel and pop it loose. Alright, so I got my trusty mallet. We're just going to try to get this right on the paper glue line, and we'll just give it a quick pop, and will split right along the paper line. And now we got those two pieces. Now let me show you what we're going to do with them. So here's what I'm working on. This is a pattern that I'm going to be tracing out on a piece of plywood to make a 6-foot nutcracker. So we're just adding a little bit of 3 dimensions to his nose by making a nose out of a 2x4 with a nostril on each side. So maybe you can come up with some other ideas of how you would use this technique. It's not a new technique, it's an old technique. It was used, I never took shop in high school, but I've heard a lot of people talk about them using glue blocks with paper, and this is just an example of how you could use it.